It's time for our first speaker, and it's with great honor that I would like to introduce Granville Goza III. Granville grew up as an Air Force brat, living in Germany, France, and several other United States before graduating from, I'm not going to pronounce it right, Kaiserslautern. He's giving me the thumbs up, so I must be okay. American High School in Germany. He earned his bachelor's degree in geography and history from Louisiana Tech University and was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Air Force in 1965. His primary specialty was aviation. His first operational assignment was in Kurot Air Force Base in Thailand, and he flew the H-43 Rescue, which he transferred to Vietnam, flying the H-43 in combat rescue. He also served in Southeast Asia from October of 1966 to October of 1967. And from there, he was assigned to England Air Force Base in Louisiana. In 1969, he converted to the fixed-wing aircraft and flew C-141 air cargo transports out of McGuire Air Force Base. He's flown all over the world. He was selected for the United States Air Force Joint Rescue and Recovery Center at Ramstein Air Force Base, Germany, and served there from 1971 until 1976, where he coordinated rescue missions with our forces and NATO countries. While there, Granville was the chief space flight recovery for the Eastern Atlantic and European region during the Apollo-Soyuz mission. His military awards include 2 Distinguished Flying Crosses, 1 Meritorious Service Medal, 9 Air Medals, 1 Air Force Commendation Medal, and 1 Combat Crew Member Medal. So please join me in welcoming Granville Goza.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Good to see you. Unfortunately, the weather has kept a lot of people away from here, I do see, but I'd like to see everyone we do have here. Today I'll be talking to you a little bit. Well, first of all, from an aviator, I want to extend my appreciation to the people who fought the war on the ground. My hat's off to you. And also would like to express my admiration for the people who were not doing the aviation, but they were doing their jobs, which allowed us to do our job. So anyway, I'll tell you a little bit about the Air Force rescue system. Most people are not really aware of the air rescue system that is part of the Air Force. And take us back to the 1960s. This was the helicopter that the Air Force had selected. The role that they had there at rescue was the local base rescue environment, which I'll tell you about a little bit more later. But anyway, the Air Force would have multiple detachments, which would have 2 of these helicopters and roughly 40 personnel, pilots, flight engineers, firemen, and the support staff. And the Air Force, and these units were displayed throughout the world, the United States, Asia, and Europe as detachments at mostly bases that were dealing with the jet fighter type things. Next slide. This is the actual helicopter. It was easy to fly from my standpoint. It was twin the rotors were intermeshing. We did not have a tail rotor, as you may not have seen, but it was a very capable aircraft for a limited role that was suited for it, which was, well, you'll see a little bit more about in a few minutes. But it could fly about 180 miles at roughly 120 miles an hour. That was our range. It could fly up as high as 25,000 feet, and it could lift in the civilian world when it's stripped down. up in the northwest that would go in, and when the people cut down the trees, and would pick the tree up and move it out and take it down from the mountain. But getting back to the Air Force, with that, with A1B detachments all around the world. The next slide. The next one. We'll go back. What is the local base rescue type thing? Next slide. We would be at the base during normal, especially fighter operations. When an aircraft would be declared emergency, coming back in, our job was to cover that at that time. Remember, this is the 1960s. Helicopter was a fairly new thing back in that time frame. And as they would declare an emergency, we would launch, scramble out of there. We would, at that time, we'd carry 2 firemen in the aircraft. We'd jump up, pick up this 2,000-pound fire extinguisher, and we would launch and go out to near the end runway in orbit while the other aircraft came in. When it came through, we would follow it down. If it landed normally, we would break off, go back to the alert area. If it was not, it crashed. We would deploy the fire extinguisher down the appropriate position, drop back down, let their firefighters off. The firefighters would go start the extinguisher, start their going into the crew department. We would jump up about 10 foot higher, and our rotor wash would keep the flame way down if it was a fire. And they would go in and get the, hopefully get the crew members out. It did not happen all that often, but it did happen. And occasionally, a few occasions, our aircraft were blown out of the sky when bombs or something like that did go off. But that was in the war zone. Next slide. You see the situation where we're hovering over the firemen as they're going into a practice fire. We did doing practice, etc. Next slide. Okay, with the detachments throughout the world, Southeast Asia called the need for 14 additional detachments had to be created and moved over in Thailand and in Vietnam. So there was never that many helicopter pilots in the Air Force, so they were really getting strained. And to man these units, our crews would be there for 30, 60, or 90 days, and then they rotate back to their location. Of course, all the other detachments were drained of some of their people. So there was a need for more helicopter pilots. So the Air Force was out there searching and through their inventory of pilots and put them back in, and TACOM said, "You're going to helicopter pilot whether you want to or not." And apparently they weren't getting enough, so they came down to a situation where, well, let's go to the pilot training bases and see what we can find there. And they made a decision to have posted people asking for volunteers when they were halfway through pilot training. We had just finished the T-37, which was the initial jet trainer. And as it turned out, we had 8 people that volunteered out of our group. I think we were the first place that they approached. And they got 8 volunteers. So they took us up and took us out to Shepherd Air Force Base. And I'm taking you up through the whole process to get to Vietnam. And they sent us through combat crew training up in Washington State, Fairchild Air Force Base. We had to go through POW training there. We had to go out in the wilderness for several days and start at one point, evade, and get to another point about 8-10 miles away. As it turned out, the winter time, and we're going to Vietnam. Who knows? But anyway, we went through there. I do know coming out of there, I was eating about 5 meals a day trying to catch up with my energy, because we did not have much in the way of food during the POW and evasion training there. From there, they sent 6 of us over to Clark Air Force Base, where they had the jungle survival. As compared to the combat crew, it was much nicer in that all we had to do was trek through a jungle. And it was not what you see on the old Tarzan movies for some of us that can remember that. It was very silent, but they did teach us where to get the water, a little bit of food, and how to create a shelter above ground. They said, don't sleep on the ground. And from there, well, again, another little escape and invasion. They took us up in the hills to the primitive tribes, and the people about 4 foot tall, really good shape for ladies, etc. And they hired them to find us guys after we had a chance to hide. And they found me. Something was crawling on. I was in the weeds, etc., in the foliage. Something was going across the lake, and I'm scared of snakes, so I took on my light real quick and saw just a great big rat. But about 15 minutes later, a little tap and turned my light on. I was caught. And then they would get a little chit. And for that chit, they got 1 pound of rice. And I think we had at least 100 to 150 people out there. So they had so much rice, it was a game to them. They had so much rice, they didn't know what to do with it. Then they trucked it back to Clark Air Force Base, where we had my friend of mine and I caught our flight over to Korat Air Base over in Thailand, where we had a chance to get a little bit of operational experience. And while I was there about 4 or 5 weeks, and then the need for a pilot came down over needed in Vietnam. My buddy was married, so I said, I'll do it. And from there, we went to Detachment 10, which you see up here. It was a fairly newly constructed base. It was a Vietnamese base. Not much to do. On the base, they had 2 Air Force attachments. Us, with about 45 people, and they had the forward air controller. These were the Air Force pilots who would fly the small Cessna Piper type aircraft around the country looking for any enemy activities, and then they would direct flights into it. This is the Vietnam here. I was up in the middle part about here in Korat, Thailand, and I was doing something down this area at Bentoy Air Force Base down in the Delta. That was the area of our operations. Okay, this is an aerial view of where we were at. This was, I'm not sure when this was taken, but I do not remember not many huts down there. Okay, I was back there in July of this year, and this is the location of my base today. It's the international airport. So I didn't get to wander around very much up there. It's quite a change in the 58 years since I was there. Okay, this is the helicopter alert. We will be standing ready for anything. Now, this was mostly a helicopter pilot. Helicopter base for the Vietnamese. We did not have much fixed wing traffic, but we were alert here. We did that in case something did happen, and there was a few occasions that aircraft diverted there that had battle damage, etc. Never had any crashes or anything like that, but that was what we did. But our primary mission was anything outside of the base, and that's where we call that ACR, Air Crew Recovery. But we were, back in those days, our communications to Saigon was almost nothing. So anything came up, we would do the mission, and then we would tell the headquarters what we had done. We didn't ask permission, we just did it. I'll go through a few pictures of, this is just back from mission. So one of our guys took a picture. Detachment commander on the right, myself in the center, and our flight engineer on the left. Okay, the base review. This is our alert facility, I guess you call it, and it was one of the few places that had some air conditioning over there. And our guys spent a lot of time down there because there's really nothing else to do on the base. It's just another view with the sandbags up in front. And this is the interior. A lot of time just sitting there waiting for something to happen and nothing happening. So you can see some of our people there. Another picture, another. Okay, this is one of our pilots. There was a pet snake we had on the base. Of course, we were challenged to wrap it around her neck, etc. I did not meet the challenge. But what you see in the background is the places that we stayed. It's each doorway had a room that was about 12 by 20 feet, and it was split in half. And there were 2 people each section there. We had a cot, and we had a metal cabinet that would lock that we put things in. And I think we had a writing surface. That's all we had in there. The bathrooms, showers, etc. was somewhere back over here. Okay. And what you see on the left here was the bunker in case of a mortar attack. Of course, traditionally, some barbecuing we did there. And like I said, our guys just spent a lot of time down around the unit. And of course, the card games they would have at night. This is another view of the helicopter. This, after some number of mortar attacks, they decided they should build a mortar embedment to sort of keep our helicopters a little bit safer. This is the commander of the air rescue came in and awarded some of our guys some awards that they had earned. This is just one of the, it's a Vietnamese base. This is one of the towers that they would watch over and protect us. And of course, this was the Vietnamese. Just so happens that then the Tet New Year, which is in January, they really celebrated. They fired off all the ammunitions into the air. So we weren't protected for a few hours. Okay, this was the forward air controller group here, the other unit. This is O2 aircraft, which had a propeller in front and back. And then that was a more modern. And the second one you see back was the older style. And they were very safe in the air. They could easily be brought down. Okay, next one. Well, this was my first mission when I got there. We had to fly out into the South China Sea, which is probably about 100 miles out. And we had a sailor that had appendicitis and they couldn't do it, deal with anything. A P-2 Navy patrol aircraft, fixed wing escorters flew out with us, make sure that we could find the ship. So this was just a picture of the ship as we were coming in to approach it. We hovered over it and used a hoist, dropped down the Stokes litter, which was basically a litter, and got the sailor out and took him to the Army hospital back in Vietnam. Of course, was then refueled and returned to our base. One of the missions that we had there was in the Delta was a lot of water, rivers, tributaries, clones, etc., like that. Groundwater Navy were the actual Navy people who worked in these rivers, and they were just referred to as groundwater Navy people. And we were training with them because when they would be patrolling up these narrow things, they were frequently ambushed. And when they were, we wanted to know how best to get in and get them off the little boats. They were about the size of a cabin cruiser with some guns, etc. Well, this is just a picture of, I was on the other boat and I took a picture of one of the helicopters working with and hovering over one of the boats practicing rescue. They're not, these are old slides, so they're not, that was taken, all of a sudden moved over to digital many years ago. Just another picture of the helicopter coming into there. Here we are dropping the Stokes litter down. You can see the flight engineer operating that, and the pilot there being directed by the flight engineer of how to move the helicopter forward, backward, left, right, whatever, until they got the patient back on board. And this is just another view as it was coming in. Okay, next. We had an occasion, we had mortar attacks occasionally until we brought in one of the Army helicopters Army helicopters, gunships that would patrol the area. And as far as I know, the mortar attacks stopped while I was there. But this is a flight line we have right now. What you're seeing here is the Vietnamese H-34 helicopters. Some of our Air Force people are there as advisors. And basically, to the right there, you see some of the forward air control aircraft. This is some of the damage after one of the attacks. All the helicopters on the base was destroyed or severely damaged. This was just a picture of one of the areas that was hit by the mortar coming in. Of course, the people were in the bunker, so we didn't have any casualty. Of course, this is where one of the hangars was wiped out. And I had, being the junior officer, being a second lieutenant, and everyone else was about 5 years older than me, or captains and majors. Any additional duties came down like administrative officer, supply officer, any job the other guys didn't want, I got. I had a little office type thing, as you see, it was up on the second floor of a storage building. And this is the shrapnel that came through the little refrigerator that was there. And this is a damage to just one picture of both of our helicopters was severely damaged. We kept them. It took about 3-4 weeks for them to get the parts in and get them repaired. So during the interim, they sent us a third aircraft to use while our aircraft were being repaired. Our guys did a super job of getting it done as fast as we could. One of the cases there, I had my helmet in the helicopter ready for any mission. And it had about an 8-inch piece of shrapnel that had actually ended up in my helmet. Fortunately, my head wasn't in it. These are just a few other pictures of the local area I took on the rare occasion I was get off. In this case, it was the entrance to the Tan Son Nhut Air Base in Saigon. Not the base I was at. As you see, there's tons of water out there. I'll quickly go through these things here. This is our 2 medical doctors that was assigned to the base. I went down to them. You can see the town in the background here. And again, some of the places they lived in, some of the conditions that you can see. I really don't remember what this picture was about, but I think it was in our area. This is an aerial view of the area. This particular area right here, right there, we found when I came back in July. It has an excellent restaurant, but this is just a view of one of the little riverways coming into the Mekong Delta. Again, some of the conditions are there. Here, you see people in their boats. They use those for surviving. Some people, a number of people actually lived on these little, I'll call them sampans. And you'll see pictures of the kind of the open air markets. Didn't really get into town, so I don't know that they had anything like a grocery store there. More of that. This is just a picture, and if you can tell, there's to get a group of the Army helicopters in a formation up there. They were flying through there. Yeah, the rice paddies and stuff like that, tons and tons of water. And water. Okay, this is a picture of Canto, the little town we were near. I took these in July. Back when I was there 58 years ago, if they had any transportation, it was a bicycle. Today, it's I'll put all the 2-wheelers down as the mopeds, and if you see along there, see every couple feet there is a moped. And that's all, they have millions of mopeds there. And cars and trucks, that's right, but not near. Just a couple pictures, the stores that are there now, moped going. And this was the picture of the restaurant I mentioned a moment ago with two of the wait staff. We did have a little bit of distraction occasionally. Jonathan Wonders, for those old enough, he was a comedian back in the olden days, I guess you call it. He came in with a group of young ladies, beautiful young ladies from our standpoint. They did it. They were there about 2.5 hours. They did a show for us, and the people, Army and Navy that was in the surrounding area would join us for this particular situation. Just a few pictures of the people, our crews, and of course, we had to help the ladies in and out of the helicopter. And if there's any well-known people that became well-known, I didn't know that. I had to run back to Karat, Thailand, to change my status from temporary in Vietnam to permanent. I pick up a few things. But it so happened Bob Hope was there, and the 2 or 3 days I was there. And you see here is Bob Hope. Of course, you can't tell who that is, and for many people, that's Phyllis Diller on the right. And that was quite a interesting little program. And then the next picture is just some dancers, young ladies dancing for the GIs. It's quite a crowd there. And it's just another picture of one of the ladies. So happened that the premier, Nguyen Van Ky, had been the chief of the Vietnamese Air Force, and he became premier. But Ninh was his base, and on rare occasions he would bring some entertainment, in this case some Vietnamese dancers, and to entertain the people. Now this is a thing that's a little bit more interesting from my standpoint. That these were the missions that we did off base, and I tried to get here to get a list. But when we did fly, okay, this area here was our area of operation. One of the missions there was not any big deal, but we had F-100 fighter that got shot up quite a bit, but the pilot was able to get over to the Gulf of Siam, so we just had to come out here and find him and take him out and get him home. Interesting part, he was a major at that time, and the other pilot, one of the pilots I flew with, met him some years later, and he'd gone from major to a major general, which I think was 2 or 3 stars.
Major, that's 3.
3 stars, okay.
Be
So is
my
that
little girl.
I'm sorry?
Be my little girl.
Okay. But when we took off, even on a tracking flight, we went as a crew ready to go off there. And one time, one of the forward air controllers noticed something, caught something out of his eye. He went over to investigate it. It turned out to be an Army H-47 helicopter that apparently fallen out of the sky. We diverted from our training mission, went out to there. And of course, there was no survivors. But while we were there, our pararescue man jumped off and checked everything out. And I did forget, a pararescue guy was the Air Force version of the Navy SEALs, only he was also a medic, trained as a medic. But he double checked everything. But the forward air controller told us that there was a group of armed people about a quarter mile away. And we decided to, because of the crash site, the bodies and equipment on board, we decided to try to do something. So we have no guns or anything like that, no weapons on the helicopter. But we go up there and do what's called a firing pass. And the helicopter that, it wasn't a Huey type aircraft, so they didn't know what was going in, so they all scattered, hit the ground, etc. But no problem with it. When we came back in, and the thing about doing second pass, we started hearing that, and we realized the guys, they were up there shooting at us then, so we deviated. But the fact told us that we had discouraged enough that they were retreating. So there was time for the Army to get their rapid deployment force out there to take over the area. We had a number of night missions, and unfortunately, I can remember flying through like a fireworks display without all the explosions, traces, etc. But I cannot remember any missions that ended up during that time frame. But it was interesting to go through that situation. Now, unfortunately, we did have some unsuccessful missions. The Navy had one of their Hueys down the river that was stationed on a barge type thing. They would take off, and they went over backwards into the river. And later, they called us in to do a search, as it turned out to be at night. So we landed on the barge, got a briefing on what had happened. So we went about 10 miles down river, and this is at night. And of course, the search, we had to turn on our searchlights and be flying. Slowly flying, and of course on either side we had all the foliage there. And fortunately, the Viet Cong, etc., wasn't aware of it, and they weren't out, and they didn't do anything. But it was a little bit nerve-wracking. So, what's going to happen next? But whenever we did have a system like this, we would get the initial notification. Daytime, we'd be airborne in about 3 minutes, and at night, we'd be in our quarters. We'd launch there. We'd be airborne within 25-30 minutes. Just another night mission. We were launched out of our quarters. We took off. It was during the monsoon season. Shortly after we took off, we got into a very heavy monsoon rain, etc. And fortunately, we were over the little town of Canton. And they had a tower with a red light on it. But at this time, our lighting system shorted out, so we were flying in the dark. No. All we had was a red light to orbit around, because we had no lights on our instruments until our flight engineer had a flashlight out and found that a circuit breaker had blown. So we got back on, and a little bit hairy there for a little bit, because you're just flying in the black or around a red light. We were up 300 or 400 feet though. And then we were able to proceed on. We would track in on the radio for the people that was down. And it was rough, but there's a few tracers shot at it from a distance. Of course, they were doing sound shots because they couldn't see us. But we went in and tracked down as we went in. Turned a flashlight on, floodlight on, just as we reached near the ground, and we saw a figure running towards us, so we picked him up, stepped in, and moved back and went to the Army place in Canton. And while there, I was talking with the attached commander. He said, keep it running, and he wanted to debrief the recovery guys, because there's still one other person out there. But while he was gone, there's something happening in my control, so I shut it down. And did I ever catch the devil from the commander there? However, the flight engineer checking everything out, so one of our blades was beginning to come apart. So commander sort of forgave me then, okay, because we were grounded. But probably timing is, how's the time?
You're good. Got good 10 more minutes.
Okay. Pardon me, I don't see, well, I have to get this here. Oh, yes, no, I was not on this mission, but there's two B-52s that crashed, and that had midair over the South China Sea, back up one. Anyway, we launched when we learned about it, and went out and searched. They had a mid-air collision, but I mean, they should have no reason why they had mid-air. But there was a total of 7 survivors who was able to eject from those two things. We got there, we found one person. Of course, the other 6 were covered by other people. And we took him to the hospital and got him back. Let's see, of course, we had to refill along this line. And one time I was standing outside the alert facility watching some Vietnamese helicopter formation, about a mile. I was just watching them, and I saw 2 collide. And they were about 700-800 feet. Anyway, they came together. Of course, that was the end of it. They were falling down the sky, and our crews were launching before they hit the surface. And we got out there, we were searching. Again, this one of the situations, there were no survivors, and no, but we were there really quickly. But there's a lot of other missions. I wish I had taken more notes, etc. And because my memory after all these years have filled in many options. But we did have quite a few Army helicopters. We would go out and pull their crews out. It would range from they would get out of the hot zone, get out land, and would be able to actually land, pick the crew up, and I'm not sure what the Army did with the helicopter after that. And a few occasions we got into a little bit hotter area. At that time, we were fortunate enough to have Army gunships, and they were very impressive because as we would be going in, they'd be ahead of us. They'd be doing kind of a circle like that, suppressing fire, etc. And we could get in and get out. And no, I was extremely fortunate. I never got any holes in my airplane, but it was finished. Oh, this is just a few of the information that I pulled off the internet about aircraft losses. You can see there's quite a few fixed-wing aircraft. It gives a lot of opportunity to find combat rescues. And a lot of helicopters. You can see, I think it's 5,700, something like that. And the bottom having this is during the entire time of Vietnam. And when I was there, we were just beginning to get the H-3s in here, and then later one of the H-53s. But you can see, these are the people who would be going into North Vietnam, all of the crew members who shot down out of that area. But they had some pretty good losses. I think this is one we have. Unfortunately, we lost 71 air rescue in action. We lost 45 aircraft, helicopters. And then, of course, the motto of the air rescue is that these things we do that others may live. I think we, in many cases, lived up to that. Okay, I'm finished with Vietnam. I'm on an airplane, I'm taking off, okay? I take this picture. I was taken off from Tosnod Air Force Base in Saigon. This is a picture of that area of Saigon. And I didn't think I'd be going back, but next. In July, when I was there, they had a building which had an observation tower on the 59th floor. And I decided to take some pictures of the Vietnam, of Saigon, or Ho Chi Minh City as they call it today. This is one of the pictures there. Next. This one. Anyway, it looks much more modern, but a lot of things has improved over there. It's a communist country. I didn't really observe any problem with that. The people were very nice. The country is beautiful. And I think I probably bored you far enough right now. So I will say thank you for having me come, and we'll go from there. Go ahead.